Poopsy the Killer. Poopsy was a normal girl who was 11 years old, but she had a special mind. The other girls were all not as special and teased Poopsy. The main bully was called Bertha, and she wore a purple cardigan and had blonde hair. It was lunch at school, and kids were eating when Bertha walked up to Poopsy.
Poopsy, you are ugly and no one loved you,
said Bertha to Poopsy's face. Poopsy sat on her own, as she had no friends. She was an underdog, a stray wolf, a black sheep if you will. Poopsy cried,
"It's not my fault!"
as Bertha laughed at her. Poopsy threw her tacos in the bin and went home. At home, she cut herself because she was depressed. Her mother walked in and asked her if she wanted anything from the shop. Poopsy declined and went to bed. But the tragedy was, she really did want something from the shop. She wanted a knife to stab Bertha, and she sighed and figured it wasn't worth it. But the thought of it gave her a feeling in her heart. She wanted to kill Bertha, but she wouldn't. Not yet. It was the next day, and the sun was shining. Poopsy had cereal for breakfast, but when licking her spoon clean and putting it back in the drawer, she took a knife. It was a brutal, ominous sharp knife. She imagined it in Bertha's head and got the feeling again. At school, she had the knife in her bag. At any moment, she could whip it out and slice everyone up. But she didn't. Not for now. Lunch came, as she sat next to a boy named Grubs. Grubs had black hair and a bike which he rode to school on. Suddenly, Bertha walked up to Poopsy.
So, Poopsy, have you seen any ghosts recently?
Cackled Bertha.
I didn't wish to be born like this,
Sighed Poopsy as she clutched the knife. Bertha spat in her face and walked away.
You can't let Bertha talk to you like that,
said Grubs.
You don't understand. I have a special mind,
sighed Poopsy as she flicked her hair out of her eyes.
Embrace it,
smiled Grubs.
I see ghosts too.
Poopsy spat out her milk.
You see ghosts too?
Yes, that's what I said,
said Grubs as he smiled. Poopsy finally had a friend. She and Grubs went to the cemetery together and saw ghosts.
I am finally happy,
she cried with joy as she threw the knife at the ground.
I don't need to kill Bertha,
she thought to herself as she rode away with Grubs on his bike. 2 months went by, and Poopsy and Grubs were officially dating. Poopsy strutted into school with a smile on her face.
Time for another day of kissing Grubs,
she smiled. Suddenly, she heard a scream that sounded both lovely yet horrifying. She ran to find what the scream was and saw Grubs lying on the floor with a rock on his head. Bertha stood opposite of him, throwing rocks at his head.
Stop it!
cried Poopsy.
I love him!
I know. That's why I'm throwing rocks at him,
said Bertha. Poopsy ran all the way to the cemetery to get the knife. She found it and ran back to school and jumped at Bertha. The two were fighting, a battle of good versus evil. Poopsy had a knife. Bertha had rocks. Poopsy was obviously the better fighter. But then Bertha threw a rock and hit the knife out of Poopsy's hand.
That's the best you got? I can just pick the knife back up.
Chuckled Poopsy. She had a good mind, so analyzed situations well. As she went to pick up, she gasped. The knife had landed on Grubs' face.
You monster!
Screamed Poopsy.
Me? You were the one who dropped the knife into his head.
Smirked Bertha as she walked to class.
Grubs, you were the only one who understood me.
Whimpered Poopsy.
Poopsy. Bleh.
Moaned Grubs as his life ended. Poopsy was left by Grubs' dead body in tears. She pulled a knife out of his face and saw blood on it. Grubs' blood.
The only way I can clear Grubs' blood from my hands is with Bertha's blood.
Smiled Poopsy as she got the feeling again. That night, Bertha climbed into bed. She snuggled into the blanket and started to snooze off. Before, she noticed a pair of eyes watching her.
Who's there?
Yelled Bertha.
Oh, I have a name.
The voice said.
But you people tend to call me other names. Crazy? Weird? Fat?
Poopsy?
Muttered Bertha. Suddenly, the figure jumped at Bertha, revealing herself as Poopsy, and stabbed Bertha with the same knife that killed Grubs. Bertha let out a scream as she died, and Poopsy whispered in her ear.
I'm sorry.